Story 1. The Loop on Interstate 40. Daniel Martinez had been driving 18-wheelers for 23 years when he encountered the loop that shouldn't exist. In May of 2023, he was hauling a load of electronics from Los Angeles to Memphis, a route he'd driven hundreds of times. The stretch through Arizona and New Mexico was particularly familiar. Miles of desert highway he could navigate half asleep. That familiarity made what happened even more disturbing. Daniel left Flagstaff just after midnight, planning to push through to Albuquerque before stopping for his mandatory rest period. The night was clear, the highway empty except for the occasional passing vehicle. His CB radio played quiet static and his GPS showed the familiar route ahead. Interstate 40 stretched straight and predictable through the darkness. Around 2 in the morning, somewhere between Winslow and Holbrook, Daniel noticed a rest stop ahead. The green sign indicated facilities, fuel, and food. He didn't particularly need to stop, but a coffee sounded good. He'd been at this rest stop before, a standard Arizona DOT facility with the usual amenities. He pulled off the highway and parked in the truck section. The rest stop was empty, which wasn't unusual for this hour. Daniel climbed out of his cab, stretched, and walked toward the building. The lights were on, but as he approached, he realized something was off. The building looked exactly like the rest stop he remembered, but the paint was fresher. The landscaping was different, small details that nagged at his awareness. Inside, the facility was deserted, no staff, no other travelers, just empty corridors and humming fluorescent lights. The coffee station was set up but not running. Daniel felt uneasy. He decided to skip the coffee and get back on the road. As he walked back to his truck, he checked his phone. No signal. That was strange but not unprecedented in rural Arizona. He climbed into his cab, started the engine, and pulled back onto Interstate 40. The highway looked normal. Daniel settled into his seat and maintained his speed at 65. The GPS showed his position and the route ahead. Everything seemed fine. 30 minutes later, Daniel saw the rest stop sign again. The exact same rest stop he'd just left. Same green sign. Same configuration. He checked his GPS. According to the system, he'd traveled 30 miles east. But there was the rest stop, impossible as that seemed. Daniel keyed his CB radio. "Breaker 19, this is Rolling Thunder. Anyone got ears on?" Only static answered. He drove past the rest stop without stopping, watching his odometer, watching the mile markers. He passed mile marker 215, then 216, 217. The markers were progressing normally. His GPS showed him moving east at highway speed. Another 30 minutes. Another appearance of the rest stop. The exact same one. Impossible. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't right. This couldn't be happening. He'd been driving this route for over 2 decades. He knew every mile marker, every exit, every landmark. There was only one rest stop in this section of highway. And somehow he kept arriving at it again and again. He tried his phone again. Still no signal. He tried the CB on multiple channels, nothing but static. He was alone on a highway that was repeating itself. Daniel pulled over to the shoulder and stopped. He got out and looked around. The desert stretched in all directions, dark under the starlight. Behind him, the highway disappeared into darkness. Ahead, the same. Nothing unusual except the impossible repetition. He walked to the back of his trailer and checked the cargo. Everything was secured and normal. The truck was functioning properly. He wasn't dreaming. He'd pinched himself, slapped his face, done all the stupid reality checks. This was real. Daniel got back in his truck and continued driving. He tried varying his speed. He tried stopping for different lengths of time. He tried exiting at the rest stop and taking different routes through the facility. Nothing changed. Every 30 minutes, like clockwork, he arrived back at the same rest stop. The fourth time through, Daniel pulled into the rest stop and parked. He needed to think. He was trapped in some kind of loop, repeating the same stretch of highway over and over, but why? And how? He walked into the rest stop building again. This time, he explored more thoroughly. In the men's room, he found graffiti on a stall wall. Recent graffiti, the marker still sharp and bright. If you're reading this, you're stuck too. I've been here 3 days. Food in the vending machines is always full. Time doesn't pass right. Going to try driving the wrong way. RH. Daniel felt ice in his veins. Someone else had been trapped here. Someone else had experienced this loop. He checked the date on his watch. May 19th. He looked at other graffiti in the bathroom. Dates scratched into walls. May 8th, 2021. October 3rd, 2019. March 15th, 2017. Each with desperate messages. Help. Can't escape. Time is broken here. People had been getting trapped in this loop for years, and apparently they eventually got out, or the messages would be more numerous, more desperate, unless they'd simply given up documenting their presence. Daniel returned to his truck. He noticed something he'd missed before. On the trailer next to his, dust covered the vehicle. Not the light dust of a few hours, but thick accumulation. He walked over and checked the license plate. The registration sticker was expired. 2 years expired. This truck had been here for at least 2 years. Daniel walked through the parking area. More trucks, all abandoned, some with dust so thick the paint was barely visible. He checked several cabs, all empty. No signs of the drivers, just empty trucks sitting in an endless loop. Panic started to set in. Daniel forced himself to breathe slowly. Think. Figure this out. The graffiti mentioned driving the wrong way. Maybe that was the key. Maybe you had to break the pattern completely. Daniel got in his truck and pulled onto the highway. But instead of heading east, he turned west. Immediately, his GPS started recalculating, showing errors. The system couldn't understand what he was doing. He drove west, watching the mile markers count down. 2:15, 2:14, 2:13, progress. Real progress. Hope surged through him. Then he saw the rest stop ahead, the same rest stop. But he was driving the wrong direction. That was impossible. The rest stop should be behind him now. Daniel's hope collapsed. The loop didn't care which direction he drove. It would always bring him back. He pulled over again. Think. There had to be a solution. Loops in fiction always had solutions. Some specific action that would break the cycle. But this wasn't fiction. This was real. And he had no idea what the trigger might be. Daniel tried everything he could think of over the next subjective hours. He tried different speeds, different lanes, stopping at different locations. Nothing worked. Every attempt ended with him arriving back at the rest stop. He was running out of fuel. That was a new concern. His fuel gauge showed half a tank. Eventually, he'd run out. And then what? Join the abandoned trucks? Wait in the loop until he died of thirst or hunger? The graffiti mentioned food in the vending machines always being full. Daniel checked. It was true. The machines were fully stocked, and they accepted his money. The dates on the food were impossible, ranging from years ago to dates in the future. Time was definitely broken here. Daniel ate a sandwich that claimed to expire in 2025, sitting in the empty rest stop, trying to understand his situation. He'd driven into some kind of anomaly, a glitch in reality, a section of highway that had become unstuck from normal space-time. He thought about the other drivers who'd been trapped here. Where were they now? Had they escaped, or had they simply vanished, leaving their trucks behind? On his 8th loop through, Daniel noticed something different. A car was parked in the regular vehicle section. A blue sedan that hadn't been there before. Or had it? Maybe he just missed it in his panic. Daniel approached the car cautiously. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. A woman, elderly, her hands on the steering wheel staring straight ahead. Daniel tapped on the window. "Excuse me? Are you okay?" The woman didn't respond, didn't even blink. Daniel tried the door. It was unlocked. He opened it carefully. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman slowly turned her head toward him. Her eyes were wrong, empty, not dead but vacant, like no one was home behind them. "The loop," she said, in a monotone voice. "The loop continues. The loop never ends. We drive and drive and drive and never arrive, never leave, just drive, just loop, forever loop." "How long have you been here?" Daniel asked. "Days, months, years. Time doesn't matter. Only the loop matters. The loop is everything." Daniel backed away from the car. The woman had gone insane, trapped here so long her mind had broken. That would be his fate too if he didn't find a way out. He returned to his truck, determination replacing panic. There had to be an answer, some variable he hadn't considered, some action that would break the cycle. Daniel thought about the nature of loops. In physics, in mathematics, loops continued until a variable changed, until something broke the equilibrium. But what variable could he change? He'd already tried speed, direction, stopping points, everything physical. Maybe the answer wasn't physical. Maybe it was conceptual. Maybe he needed to change his own perspective, his own interaction with the loop. On the next repetition, Daniel drove past the rest stop without slowing. He didn't look at it, didn't acknowledge its existence. He focused entirely on the road ahead, on his destination, on the life he wanted to return to. The rest stop appeared ahead again, but Daniel didn't acknowledge it. He drove past, maintaining focus on Memphis, on his delivery, on reality outside the loop. Something changed. The quality of light shifted subtly. The stars looked different. Daniel checked his GPS. It showed him 45 miles east of where the loop had been. Real progress. Actual movement through space. He'd done it. By refusing to acknowledge the loop, by maintaining focus on his true destination, he'd broken free. Daniel drove straight through to Albuquerque, not stopping, barely breathing. Terrified the loop would reclaim him. When he finally saw the city lights on the horizon, he nearly cried with relief. He completed his delivery to Memphis 3 days late but alive. He filed a report with his company about a GPS malfunction causing delays. They accepted the explanation without question. Daniel never told anyone the full truth about what happened. Who would believe him? But he changed his routes after that. He never drove that section of Interstate 40 through Arizona again. He'd take longer routes, less efficient paths, anything to avoid that stretch of highway between Winslow and Holbrook. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel wonders about the other drivers still trapped in the loop. The abandoned trucks. The woman in the blue sedan who'd lost her mind. Are they still there, driving the same 30 miles over and over? Or did some of them eventually find the same solution he did? Breaking free through sheer force of will and refusal to accept the anomaly. He'll never know, and he'll never go back to find out. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, some roads better left untraveled. Daniel learned that in May of 2023 on a stretch of highway where time and space no longer followed the rules. Where the loop continues even now, waiting for the next driver who happens to stop at a rest stop that shouldn't exist. Story 2. The Hitchhiker on Route 95. Patricia Sullivan had been a long-haul trucker for 19 years, and she'd learned early on never to pick up hitchhikers. It was a firm rule drilled into every driver. Too much liability, too much risk, too many horror stories about hitchhikers turning violent. But in November of 2022, on a lonely stretch of Route 95 through Maine, Patricia broke her rule, and she would regret it for the rest of her life. She was hauling paper products from a mill in Millinocket down to Portland, a routine run she made twice a month. The night was cold and clear, temperature hovering around 20 degrees. At just past midnight, her headlights caught a figure standing on the shoulder. A young woman, maybe 25, wearing inadequate clothing for the weather. No coat, just jeans and a sweater. She was waving frantically. Patricia's first instinct was to drive past, but something made her hesitate. The woman looked desperate and freezing. This section of Route 95 was isolated with miles between towns. If Patricia didn't stop, the woman might die from exposure. Against her better judgment, Patricia pulled over. She grabbed her CB radio. "Breaker 19, this is Northern Star. I'm picking up a stranded motorist at mile marker 103 on Route 95 northbound. Young female appears to be in distress, just documenting for safety. Over." Static answered. That was odd. The CB had been working fine earlier. Patricia opened her passenger door. The young woman climbed in quickly, shivering violently. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you so much. My car broke down miles back. I've been walking for hours. I'm so cold." "What happened to your coat?" Patricia asked, cranking up the heat. "I didn't have one. I was just supposed to be driving a short distance. Then my car died." Patricia noticed the woman had no purse, no phone, nothing. "Where are you headed?" "South, just south, anywhere south." Something felt wrong. Patricia couldn't articulate what exactly, just a nagging sense that this situation wasn't what it appeared to be. But the woman was clearly freezing, her lips nearly blue. Patricia put the truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway. "What's your name?" Patricia asked. "Sarah." "I'm Patricia. I can take you as far as Bangor. There's a truck stop there where you can get warm and call someone." Thank you so much." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Patricia kept glancing at Sarah, noting details. The woman's clothes, while thin, weren't wet. If she'd been walking for hours in this weather, there should be frost or moisture from her breath. Her shoes looked new, the treads barely worn. If she'd been walking on the shoulder for miles, they should be scuffed or dirty. "Sarah, are you sure you're okay? Do you need me to take you to a hospital?" "No hospitals, just south. I need to get south." Patricia's unease grew. She checked her mirrors. The highway behind was empty. No broken-down car visible anywhere. No other vehicles at all. "Where's your car? Did you pass it walking?" I don't remember exactly. It was dark. I just walked toward lights, toward the highway." Patricia reached for her CB again. "Breaker 19, Northern Star checking in. Still transporting stranded motorist. Approximately 10 miles south of previous position. Over." Still just static. Patricia tried her cell phone. No signal. That wasn't unusual in rural Maine, but combined with the CB not working, it felt ominous. Sarah was staring out the window with an odd intensity. Her shivering had stopped, which should have been good, but something about her stillness felt wrong. "Sarah, you warming up okay?" "We need to go faster," Sarah said without looking at Patricia. "I'm at the speed limit. Any faster and we need to go faster. They're following us." Patricia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Who's following us?" "I can't explain. Please, just drive faster. Get as far south as you can. Don't stop. Don't slow down, please." Patricia checked her mirrors again. Still nothing behind them. But Sarah's fear seemed genuine, her voice desperate. "Sarah, I need you to tell me what's going on. If someone's after you, if you're in danger, I need to know. You wouldn't believe me. No one ever believes me, but they're coming. They always come. I thought I'd finally lost them, but they're coming. I can feel it." Patricia considered pulling over and telling Sarah to get out. This was exactly why she didn't pick up hitchhikers. Too much drama, too much unknown. But curiosity mixed with concern kept her driving. Try me. Tell me what you're running from. Sarah finally turned to look at Patricia. Her eyes were strange. Not the color, which was ordinary brown, but the expression. Ancient, exhausted. Eyes that had seen too much. How old do you think I am? Sarah asked. Patricia frowned. I don't know. Mid-20s? I'm 73 years old. I was born in 1949. I've looked like this since 1995. That was the year I made a mistake, the year I took something that didn't belong to me. And they've been hunting me ever since. Patricia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Sarah, that's not possible. You're clearly in your 20s. I stopped aging, part of the curse, I guess, or the punishment. I took something sacred from a place I shouldn't have been, an artifact from a town in northern Maine that doesn't appear on any maps. A town where time doesn't work right. And when I took it, when I tried to leave, they marked me. They've been chasing me for 27 years. Every few months, they catch up. And I have to run again, stay ahead of them. If they catch me, they'll take me back, and I'll spend eternity in that place where time is broken. Patricia wanted to laugh, wanted to dismiss this as the ramblings of someone mentally ill or on drugs. But something in Sarah's voice, in her eyes, made the story feel true. What artifact? What did you take? A clock. A beautiful antique clock from what looked like an abandoned house. I was young, stupid, thought I'd stumbled onto an amazing find in a forgotten town. But the town wasn't abandoned. It just existed differently. The people there, they'd found a way to exist outside normal time, and the clock was what anchored them. What kept them stable. When I took it, I damaged their reality, and now they want it back, want me back. Want to make me part of their timeless existence as punishment. Patricia glanced in her side mirror and her breath caught. Headlights, several pairs of headlights, far behind but approaching fast, much faster than the speed limit would allow. Is that them? Patricia asked, her voice tight. Sarah looked back and went pale. Yes, drive faster, please. Patricia pressed down on the accelerator. Her rig wasn't built for speed, but she pushed it to 70, 75. The headlights behind kept gaining. They were moving impossibly fast, covering distance that shouldn't be possible. What happens if they catch us? Patricia demanded. They'll take me and they'll take you too because you helped me, because you're involved now. They don't distinguish. Anyone who interferes becomes part of it. Patricia felt anger flare through her fear. This woman had dragged her into something insane, something dangerous, without warning or consent. The headlights were closer now. Patricia could see the vehicles clearly in her mirrors. Old cars, models from the 1940s and 50s, at least 6 of them, all moving in perfect formation far faster than they should be capable of. Patricia grabbed her CB. Mayday, Mayday, this is Northern Star on Route 95. I am being pursued by unknown vehicles at high speed, requesting immediate law enforcement assistance. Mile marker approximately 125. Over. Only static. But in the static, Patricia heard something. Voices. Faint voices speaking in unison. Return what was taken. Return what was taken. Return what was taken. Sarah was crying. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have just frozen on the roadside. Should have let it happen there. Now you're involved. Now you're part of it. The lead car was directly behind Patricia's trailer now. She could see the driver in her mirror. An old man in clothes from the 1940s. His face was expressionless, his eyes fixed forward. The other cars pulled alongside, surrounding Patricia's truck. Give them back the clock, Patricia shouted. Whatever you took, give it back. I don't have it anymore. I sold it decades ago. I've told them 1,000 times, but they don't listen. They don't care. They just want me. Want to take me back to their place outside time. The cars began to force Patricia's truck toward the shoulder. She fought the wheel, trying to maintain position, but there were too many of them. They moved in perfect coordination, inhuman precision, pushing her inexorably toward the edge of the road. "What do I do?" Patricia shouted. "You have to let me go," Sarah said, her voice suddenly calm. "Stop the truck. Let me out. Maybe if I surrender, they'll leave you alone. They'll take you. I know. But maybe I'll finally stop running. Maybe that's what I need. 27 years is a long time to run." Patricia didn't want to stop. Didn't want to surrender this woman to whatever these things were. But the cars were forcing her off the road. In seconds, she'd crash into the trees. She hit the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop on the shoulder, the trailer jackknifing slightly. The pursuing cars stopped instantly, perfectly synchronized. Sarah opened the door. "I'm sorry," she said again. "Destroy your dashcam footage. Forget this happened. Tell anyone who asks that you never saw me." She climbed down from the cab. The doors of the pursuing cars opened. Figures emerged, men and women in outdated clothes, moving with that same mechanical precision. They surrounded Sarah, forming a circle. Patricia watched through her window, unable to look away. The figures stood still, staring at Sarah. Then they began to speak in unison, that same chant Patricia had heard on the CB. "Return what was taken." "I don't have it," Sarah said. "I told you I sold it years ago. It's gone." "Return what was taken." "I can't." The figures moved closer, tightening the circle. Sarah screamed, not in pain, but in frustration and despair. Then they touched her, all at once, every figure reaching out with gray hands. And when they made contact, Sarah began to change. Not physically, but her expression. The ancient exhaustion in her eyes faded, replaced by emptiness. Blankness. She stopped struggling, stopped screaming. Just stood there passive as they led her toward one of the cars. Patricia jumped out of her cab. "Wait, let her go!" The figures ignored her. They put Sarah in one of the cars. Then they all returned to their vehicles. Doors closed in perfect synchrony. Engines started together. And they drove away, heading north, back the way Patricia had come. Within seconds, they disappeared into the darkness as if they'd never existed. Patricia stood on the shoulder, shaking. Her CB crackled to life. Normal traffic. Truckers chatting on various channels. Her cell phone showed signal again. She checked her dash cam. The footage showed her driving alone. No hitchhiker, no pursuing cars. Just Patricia driving normally down Route 95. The system had recorded nothing unusual. Patricia got back in her truck. She sat there for 20 minutes trying to process what had happened. Finally, she put the truck in gear and continued south. She didn't report the incident, didn't file any paperwork. What would she say? She completed her delivery to Portland on schedule, but she requested a different route for future runs. She never drove that section of Route 95 through northern Maine again. Patricia thinks about Sarah often, wonders what happened to her. Did they take her back to that timeless town? Is she trapped there now, existing outside normal time, paying eternally for a moment of theft decades ago? Patricia researches sometimes late at night, looking for mentions of abandoned towns in northern Maine, places that aren't on maps, places where time works differently. She finds nothing concrete, just rumors, stories, legends about places that exist in the gaps between the real world and something else. She never picks up hitchhikers anymore, not because of the company policy, but because she knows now that some people are running from things worse than cold and isolation. Some people carry curses that can spread. Some people are prey to hunters that don't follow the normal rules of reality. And sometimes, when Patricia drives at night, she sees them in her peripheral vision. Old cars driving alongside her just for a moment, just long enough to remind her. She's seen something she wasn't supposed to see. She's involved in something she doesn't understand. And whatever took Sarah that night knows Patricia's face, knows her truck, knows she was part of it, even briefly. So Patricia drives carefully now, follows every rule, stays away from isolated roads when possible. And she never ever stops for anyone standing alone on the shoulder, no matter how desperate they might appear. Because she learned the hard way that some people standing on roadside aren't looking for help. They're looking for escape from something far worse than an abandoned shoulder in the cold Maine night. Story 3. The facility off exit 52. Gregory Thompson had hauled specialized cargo for 16 years, but he'd never received instructions quite like the ones he got in August of 2023. The shipping manifest was vague. Biological samples being transported from a facility in rural Nevada to a research center in Colorado. The pickup location was listed as Exit 52, Interstate 80. But when Gregory checked his maps, Exit 52 didn't exist. Interstate 80 ran through northern Nevada, but the exits went from 51 to 53. There was no 52. He called his dispatcher. There's an error in the manifest. The pickup location doesn't exist. The dispatcher sounded annoyed. Thompson, just follow the GPS coordinates. They'll get you there. This is a high-value load, very important client. Don't screw it up. The GPS coordinates led Gregory off Interstate 80 at what should have been the space between exits 51 and 53. But as he approached, he saw it. A new exit ramp, clearly visible, with a green sign reading Exit 52. The sign looked weathered, as if it had been there for decades, but Gregory could have sworn it hadn't been there on his last run through this area 2 weeks ago. He took the exit. The ramp led down to a 2-lane road cutting through desert scrubland. His GPS showed him 5 miles from the pickup location. The road was smooth and well-maintained, but completely deserted. No other vehicles, no buildings, just empty desert under the afternoon sun. After 3 miles, Gregory saw a fence, tall chain link topped with razor wire stretching in both directions as far as he could see. A gate blocked the road, and a small guardhouse stood beside it. As Gregory approached, a guard emerged. The man wore a security uniform with no identifying patches or logos. Gregory rolled down his window. "I'm here for a pickup, Thompson Freight Services." The guard checked a clipboard. "ID, please." Gregory handed over his driver's license and commercial license. The guard studied them carefully, then nodded and returned them. "Straight ahead, 2 miles, the loading dock. They're expecting you. Don't stop anywhere else. Don't take any photographs. Don't leave your vehicle except at the designated loading area." The gate opened. Gregory drove through, unease growing in his gut. What kind of facility had this level of security, and what exactly was he picking up? The road led through empty desert, no buildings visible, just scrubland and the road. Then after 2 miles exactly, the facility appeared as if materialized from nothing. It was massive, sprawling across acres of desert. Windowless concrete buildings, loading docks, equipment that looked medical or scientific. Everything modern and clean, but completely anonymous. No signs, no company names. Nothing identifying what this place was or who operated it. Gregory pulled up to the designated loading dock. A man in a white cleanroom suit emerged from the building. He held a tablet and gestured for Gregory to back up to the dock. Gregory complied, executing a perfect backing maneuver. As soon as his trailer was aligned, workers in the same white suits emerged. They carried a single container about the size of a refrigerator marked with biohazard symbols and warnings in multiple languages. The container was sealed with locks that looked like they required special codes to open. One of the workers approached Gregory's window. "You understand the transport requirements? Climate controlled at exactly 38 degrees Fahrenheit. No stops except for fuel. No opening the trailer under any circumstances. Deliver directly to the facility in Colorado Springs by 0600 tomorrow." "Understood," Gregory said, though his unease intensified. "What exactly am I transporting?" The worker's expression, visible through the clear face shield, was completely neutral. "That information is classified. You're transporting a sealed, temperature-controlled container. That's all you need to know." They loaded the container and sealed Gregory's trailer. One of the workers attached a monitoring device to the trailer's exterior. "This tracks location and internal temperature. Any deviation will trigger an alert. Stay on the prescribed route, no exceptions." Gregory was given a route that took him on back roads and small highways rather than the most direct path. When he questioned it, the worker simply repeated, "Stay on the prescribed route. No exceptions." Gregory left the facility, following the same road back to the gate. As he exited and turned onto the road leading back to the interstate, he glanced in his mirror. The facility was gone. Just empty desert where the sprawling complex had been seconds before. He blinked, looked again. Still nothing. Desert and scrubland. No buildings, no evidence anything had ever been there. Gregory checked his GPS. It showed him at the coordinates where the facility should be, but no facility was displayed on the map. Just empty land. He got back on Interstate 80 and headed east, following the prescribed route. The afternoon faded into evening. Gregory stopped for fuel at a designated location, a small truck stop in rural Nevada. He kept the engine running to maintain the trailer's refrigeration. As he pumped fuel, another trucker approached. Older man, weathered face. "What you hauling?" "Medical supplies," Gregory said, being vague. The man looked at Gregory's trailer, at the monitoring device attached to it. His expression changed. "You picked up from the facility off exit 52, didn't you?" Gregory felt a chill. "You know about it?" "I've hauled from there twice. Both times weird things happened. First time I delivered the load without incident but couldn't remember most of the drive. Like hours were just gone from my memory. Second time I got rear-ended by a car that appeared out of nowhere. Totaled the car but didn't even scratch my trailer. The people in the car were taken away in unmarked vans. Cops never came. No accident report. Nothing. It was like it never happened." "What is that place?" Gregory asked. The old trucker shrugged. "Don't know. Some kind of government research, I figure, black budget stuff. Whatever they're doing there, it's something they don't want people knowing about. My advice? Deliver your load. Take your money, forget you were ever there, don't ask questions, don't go back." Gregory finished fueling and continued his route. He drove through the night the prescribed path, taking him on increasingly isolated roads. Small highways through the middle of nowhere. He saw few other vehicles. The prescribed route was clearly designed to avoid populated areas. Around 3 in the morning, somewhere in eastern Utah, Gregory's CB radio crackled to life. No one should be broadcasting on these empty roads. "Transport 79er, this is oversight. We're tracking unusual readings from your cargo. Confirmed trailer temperature is maintaining specifications." Gregory checked his refrigeration system. 38 degrees exactly. "Temperature is stable. No issues. Copy. Maintain current speed en route. Do not stop until fuel is required. Acknowledge." Acknowledged. "Who is this?" "Oversight. We're monitoring your transport. Continue as prescribed." The radio went silent. Gregory felt watched. They were actively tracking him, monitoring not just his location but the conditions of his cargo. What the hell was in that container? He continued driving, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. Biological samples, high security, a facility that seemed to appear and disappear, constant monitoring. This wasn't normal medical transport. This was something else, something dangerous. As dawn approached, Gregory entered Colorado. The prescribed route led him into the mountains on narrow roads that seemed barely maintained. This wasn't the way to Colorado Springs. This was going into remote wilderness. His CB crackled again. Transport 79er, you're approaching the delivery point. Reduce speed to 30 miles per hour. Watch for the access road on your right at coordinates transmitted to your GPS. New coordinates appeared on Gregory's GPS, leading to a point deep in the mountains. He followed the directions, turning onto an unmarked dirt road that climbed steeply. After 2 miles, he reached a gate similar to the one in Nevada. Same style, same security setup, guards in the same unmarked uniforms. Gregory was directed to a loading dock built into the mountainside. The facility here was smaller but even more concealed, most of it underground. Workers in white suits emerged and unloaded the container with extreme care. One of them approached Gregory. The payment has been transferred to your account. You'll receive a bonus for on-time delivery. Now, we need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Gregory was presented with a tablet showing a dense legal document. He skimmed it. The NDA was comprehensive and aggressive. He agreed never to discuss the cargo, the facilities, the routes, or any aspect of the transport. Violations would result in severe legal consequences. I'm not signing this, Gregory said. I delivered your cargo. Pay me and I'm done. The worker's expression hardened. Mr. Thompson, this is not optional. You've transported classified materials between classified facilities. You will sign the agreement, or we will have a much longer conversation about legal obligations and national security. Gregory looked at the armed security personnel standing nearby. He signed. Good, the worker said. One more thing. You need to stay here for a debriefing. It's standard procedure. How long? A few hours. We need to ensure you experienced no symptoms during transport. Symptoms of what? The debriefing will explain. Gregory was escorted into the facility, into a small room with a medical chair and monitoring equipment. A doctor in a white coat entered. Mr. Thompson, I need to ask you some questions and run a few simple tests. During your transport, did you experience any unusual symptoms, headaches, nausea, visual disturbances, auditory hallucinations, temporal disorientation? Temporal what? Feeling like time was moving incorrectly, faster or slower than normal, gaps in memory, moments you can't account for. Gregory thought about the drive. Had he lost time? He'd driven all night, but could he account for every hour? There were stretches where the driving felt automatic, where he couldn't remember specific details. But that was normal on long night drives, wasn't it? I don't think so, Gregory said uncertainly. The doctor ran tests, blood pressure, temperature, eye response, coordination tests. Everything came back normal. You're lucky, the doctor said. Sometimes the cargo has side effects on drivers, especially if the containment protocols aren't perfect. You seem fine, but we'll want you to report any unusual symptoms over the next week. You have a number to call in your NDA documentation. Side effects from what? What was I carrying? The doctor ignored the question. You're clear to leave. Follow security back to your truck. They'll escort you off the property. Thank you for your service. Gregory was led back to his truck. His trailer was empty now, cleaned thoroughly. Guards escorted him back down the mountain road to the highway. As he drove away, he checked his mirror. The facility was gone, just like in Nevada, hidden in the mountain, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Gregory completed his trip home. The payment appeared in his account as promised, along with a substantial bonus. But the money didn't make him feel better. He couldn't stop thinking about the transport, the warnings, the tests. What had been in that container? And why had the doctor been so concerned about symptoms? Over the next week, Gregory watched himself carefully for any unusual effects. He seemed fine, no symptoms, no issues. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. That exposure to whatever he'd transported had affected him in some subtle way he couldn't identify. He never received another call for a pickup from exit 52. In fact, when he checked his maps and GPS later, exit 52 didn't appear. Just the gap between 51 and 53, like it had never existed. Gregory requested transfers to different routes after that. He stuck to normal cargo, commercial freight, nothing classified, nothing that required NDAs and medical screening. But sometimes when he drives Interstate 80 through Nevada, he looks for exit 52. And sometimes, just for a moment in his peripheral vision, he sees it. The exit ramp, the green sign, the road leading off into empty desert. He never takes it, never slows down, just keeps driving, pretending he didn't see anything. Because Gregory learned something during that transport. Some facilities don't officially exist. Some cargo is too dangerous to acknowledge. And some jobs leave you with questions you can never answer, haunted by the knowledge that you transported something terrible, something that should never have been moved, and you'll never know what it was or what it might become. Late at night, Gregory still wonders, what was in that container? Where did it come from? What were they doing with it? And most terrifying of all, what would have happened if the containment had failed while he was driving it through the empty desert and mountains, alone and isolated, with nowhere to run and no one to help? He'll never know. And perhaps that's better. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. Some truths are better left buried in facilities that don't exist, accessed through exits that appear and disappear, carrying cargo that leaves no paper trail and no memory. Gregory still drives trucks, still hauls freight across the country, but he reads every manifest carefully now. And if anything seems strange, if any pickup location doesn't quite make sense, if any cargo requires unusual security or monitoring, Gregory refuses the load. Because once was enough. Once was more than enough, and he never wants to visit exit 52 again. Story 4. The Dead Mile. Vincent Carter had driven every major highway in the continental United States during his 21 years as a trucker. He'd seen everything roads had to offer: blizzards, floods, accidents, construction that lasted years. But in March of 2024, on a routine run through West Virginia, Vincent discovered something he'd never encountered before: a section of highway where the dead walked. He was hauling automotive parts from Detroit to Charlotte, taking Interstate 64 through West Virginia's mountains. It was just after midnight when he entered what he'd later learn was called the Dead Mile, though no official maps acknowledged the name. The stretch of highway looked normal at first. 2 lanes in each direction, well-maintained, cutting through dense forest. His GPS showed standard routing. Traffic was light, which was typical for this hour. Vincent was listening to a podcast, cruise control set at 65, completely relaxed. Then he saw the first one. A man standing on the shoulder facing the highway, middle-aged, wearing clothes from decades past, a suit and tie, formal and outdated. The man wasn't moving, wasn't hitchhiking, just standing there, watching traffic pass. Vincent noticed because something about the figure seemed wrong. The man's stillness was too absolute, too perfect, like a statue rather than a living person. A quarter-mile later, Vincent saw another figure, a woman in a dress from the 1950s standing at the edge of the trees, also perfectly still, also watching the highway with fixed attention. Vincent keyed his CB radio. Breaker 19, anyone on this channel notice something weird on 64? People standing on the shoulder who aren't moving? Over. No response, which was strange. Usually someone was always monitoring the CB channels through this area. More figures appeared. A child in old-fashioned clothes, an elderly man with a cane, a young woman in a waitress uniform from another era, all standing at irregular intervals along the highway, all perfectly motionless, all watching. Vincent's unease grew into genuine fear. This wasn't normal. People didn't stand on highway shoulders at midnight in random historical clothing staring at traffic. This was wrong on every level. He checked his odometer, planning to note exactly where this strange stretch was so he could report it. But as he watched the display, something impossible happened. The numbers stopped advancing. He was moving at 65 miles per hour according to his speedometer, but the odometer remained frozen at the same reading. Vincent tapped the display. The speedometer still worked, showing his constant speed, but the odometer wouldn't advance, like the truck was moving but not covering actual distance. The figures on the shoulder increased in number. Now they appeared every 100 feet. Men, women, children, all in clothes from different decades, 1920s, 1940s, 1960s, standing, watching, never moving. Vincent tried his CB again. Is anyone hearing this? I need confirmation from another driver. Something's wrong with this stretch of highway. Over. A response came, but not from another trucker. The voice was old, crackling like it was coming through damaged equipment. You're in the dead mile now, driver. We're all here. Everyone who died on this road. We stand watch. We wait. Vincent felt ice in his veins. Who is this? I was Gerald Hansen. Died here in 1953. Truck lost its brakes coming down the mountain. Killed 5 people in the collision. We all stand here now. All the dead from this mile of road. Watching. Waiting. More voices joined in, overlapping on the CB. Men and women describing their deaths. Car accidents. Truck crashes. A bus that went off the road in 1968, killing 23. A pileup in a blizzard in 1981. Decades of tragedy compressed into 1 mile of highway, and somehow all the dead remained, anchored to the place where they'd lost their lives. Vincent wanted to speed up, to race through this cursed stretch of road. But when he pressed the accelerator, his speedometer climbed, but his actual progress seemed unchanged. The forest passing by his windows looked the same. The painted lines on the road seemed to repeat in identical patterns. He was moving but staying in place, trapped in a loop of that single mile. The figures on the shoulder turned as he passed, their heads swiveling to follow his truck. Empty eyes tracking his progress. Mouths open as if speaking, though no sound penetrated his cab. Vincent's GPS went haywire, displaying impossible locations. One moment it showed him in West Virginia, the next in Kansas, then New York, then nowhere at all. Just error messages and flickering displays. He tried his cell phone, no signal. He tried the emergency SOS function, no response. He was cut off, isolated in this mile that existed outside normal space. The voices on the CB grew louder, more insistent, each one telling their story, each one describing the moment of their death on this cursed stretch of road. Some were quick, sudden impacts they barely processed. Others were slow, trapped in burning vehicles or crushed under collapsed loads, dying over hours while they waited for rescue that came too late. Why are you doing this? Vincent shouted into his CB mic. What do you want? To be remembered, the chorus of voices responded. To be acknowledged. We died here. We're forgotten. Names on old police reports. Statistics. No one thinks about us, no one remembers, but we're still here. We'll always be here. A figure appeared directly in front of Vincent's truck, standing in his lane. A young man in a leather jacket, 1980s style. Vincent swerved, but the figure didn't move. The truck passed through it like smoke. More figures manifested on the road, walking across lanes, standing in the middle of the highway. Each time Vincent's truck passed through them without impact. They weren't solid, they were echoes, impressions, memories burned into the fabric of this place. Vincent realized he needed to accept what was happening rather than fight it. These entities weren't trying to hurt him, they were trying to communicate, to make their existence acknowledged. He keyed his CB. I hear you. I see you. I acknowledge your deaths. I won't forget. The voices on the CB quieted. The figure directly ahead of him stepped aside. The forest outside his windows began to change, no longer repeating in identical patterns. His odometer started advancing again. Vincent checked his GPS. It showed him nearing the end of the problematic stretch back in normal space. The figures on the shoulder remained visible but began to fade, becoming translucent, less defined. One final voice came through his CB, older than the others, more distant. Thank you for seeing us. Most drivers pass through without noticing, without acknowledging. You saw, you listened. You can leave now. The forest opened up. Vincent saw the exit sign for a rest stop ahead, confirming he was back in normal reality. He pulled off immediately, parking in the truck section, his hands shaking on the wheel. He sat there for 30 minutes trying to process what had happened. Then he pulled out his phone and started researching. He found articles about a particularly dangerous stretch of Interstate 64 in West Virginia. Multiple fatalities over the decades, enough that locals called it cursed, though officials attributed the accidents to poor road design and weather conditions. Vincent found old newspaper archives, names and faces of people who'd died there. Gerald Hansen, who'd lost his brakes in 1953, a bus crash in 1968, the blizzard pileup in 1981, dozens more, small tragedies forgotten by everyone except the families of the victims. He wrote down every name he could find, created a list. These people wanted to be remembered. The least he could do was remember them. Vincent completed his delivery to Charlotte. But on his return trip, he made a detour. He drove back to that stretch of highway in daylight. It looked completely normal. Well-maintained road through beautiful mountain forest. No figures, no supernatural presence. Just an ordinary mile of interstate. But Vincent felt them watching, felt the weight of all those deaths, all those lost lives anchored to this place. He pulled onto the shoulder and got out of his truck. He stood there, reading aloud the names from his list, acknowledging each person, each death, each tragedy that had occurred here. When he finished, he felt a shift in the atmosphere. Not dramatic, just subtle. A sense of relief, of gratitude from somewhere beyond the visible world. Vincent got back in his truck and continued home. He reported his experience to no one official. Who would believe him? But he posted anonymously online about the dead mile, about the stretch of Interstate 64 where the dead stand watch. He included the names he'd researched, memorializing them publicly. Other truckers responded to his post. Some confirmed similar experiences on that stretch of road, figures on the shoulder, voices on the CB. Time behaving strangely. Others had passed through without incident, unaware of anything unusual. Vincent developed a theory. The dead mile manifested for those who were receptive, who were capable of perceiving beyond the normal. Most drivers passed through in ignorance, protected by their skepticism. But those who could see, who acknowledged the presence of the dead, they experienced the full phenomenon. Vincent still drives that route regularly. Each time he passes through the dead mile, he sees them. The figures on the shoulder, always watching, always waiting. But they don't trap him anymore, don't freeze time or distance. They just watch, acknowledged and remembered, their vigil witnessed by someone who understands. He keeps an updated list now. Every 6 months, he researches accident reports from that stretch of highway. If anyone dies there, he adds their name to his list. On his next trip through, he pulls over and reads the new names aloud, a small memorial service for those who died on the road. Vincent tells other truckers about the dead mile when they mention traveling through West Virginia. Some think he's crazy. Others listen carefully, memorizing the location, preparing for what they might encounter. Because the dead mile still exists, still claims lives in accidents that are always attributed to normal causes, still collects the dead who remain anchored to the place where their lives ended suddenly and violently. And they're still watching, still waiting for someone to see them, acknowledge them, remember them, because that's all they want. Not revenge, not to cause harm, just to be remembered. To have their deaths mean something beyond statistics and police reports. Vincent gives them that, and in return they let him pass safely through their domain, a living man traveling through a place where the boundary between life and death is measured in exactly 1 mile of American highway. Story 5. The cargo that couldn't be delivered. Rebecca Montgomery had been hauling freight for 14 years when she accepted what should have been a simple delivery in June of 2023. The manifest listed standard commercial cargo, restaurant equipment being transported from a warehouse in Oklahoma City to a new restaurant in Denver. The pay was good, the route straightforward, the delivery deadline reasonable. Rebecca loaded her trailer at the Oklahoma warehouse and hit the road, expecting a routine 2-day job. The trouble began when Rebecca tried to deliver the cargo. The address on the manifest led her to a commercial district in Denver. When she arrived at the specified location, she found an empty lot. No restaurant, no building at all. Just concrete foundation and construction debris like a structure had recently been demolished. Rebecca checked the paperwork. The address was correct. She called the dispatch number listed on the manifest. The call went to voicemail, a generic message with no specific company name. She called her own dispatcher. "I'm at the delivery address, but there's nothing here. Building's gone. What do I do?" Her dispatcher sounded confused. "Let me check the client information. Hold on." 5 minutes passed. Then her dispatcher came back on the line, sounding worried. "Rebecca, this is weird. The client company, the one who arranged this shipment, doesn't exist. The business license number is fake. The billing information leads to a dead end. But the payment cleared. Someone paid us $50,000 to transport this cargo, but I can't figure out who. What do I do with the load? Don't unload it. I need to escalate this. Just sit tight and I'll call you back." Rebecca parked her rig and waited. 20 minutes later, her dispatcher called again. "Okay, this is getting stranger. I contacted the warehouse where you picked up the cargo. They have no record of the load being stored there or picked up. According to their system, that cargo doesn't exist. But you definitely loaded something, right?" "Of course I loaded something. I watched them fork it onto my trailer. Restaurant equipment. Stainless steel tables, industrial refrigerators, ovens. Standard stuff. Can you check the cargo? Just verify what's actually in there?" Rebecca walked to the back of her trailer and broke the seal. She opened the doors and gasped. The trailer was empty, completely empty, not a single piece of equipment, just bare walls. "It's gone," she said into her phone. "The cargo is gone, the trailer's empty." "That's impossible. You loaded it 8 hours ago. You sealed the trailer yourself." "Are you sure someone didn't break in during a stop?" "I haven't stopped except for fuel. And I watched the trailer the whole time. No one touched it." Rebecca heard her dispatcher talking to someone else in the background, voices discussing the situation. Finally, he came back on the line. "Rebecca, I need you to drive back to Oklahoma City. We need to figure out what's going on." Rebecca closed her empty trailer and started the drive back to Oklahoma. But as she drove, she noticed something strange. Her fuel gauge wasn't dropping. She'd driven over 200 miles since leaving Denver, but her fuel level remained constant, like the tank was refilling itself as fast as she burned fuel. She pulled over at a rest stop and checked the tank. Full. Impossible. She'd started the trip from Oklahoma with 3/4 of a tank. She should be under half by now. Rebecca called her dispatcher again. "Something's wrong with my truck. The fuel isn't depleting." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've driven hundreds of miles and my tank is still full. It's like the fuel is regenerating or I'm not actually burning any." Silence on the line. Then, "Rebecca, I'm sending you to our nearest maintenance facility. Exit off I-35 at the next town. Get the truck checked out. Something's seriously wrong." But Rebecca had already noticed something else. The highway seemed wrong. The mile markers were repeating. She'd passed mile marker 217 3 times now. And the landscape outside her windows looked identical to what she'd seen 30 minutes ago. She wasn't making forward progress. She was looping somehow, trapped in a section of highway that repeated endlessly. She checked her GPS. It showed her location changing normally, advancing toward Oklahoma City. But what she saw outside contradicted the GPS. The visual evidence suggested she wasn't moving forward at all, just covering the same ground over and over. Rebecca's CB radio crackled to life. "Rebecca Montgomery, can you hear this transmission?" The voice was strange, modulated like it was being artificially generated. "This is Rebecca. Who is this?" "We apologized for the confusion. The delivery address was not in your present reality. The cargo was successfully delivered to the intended destination in an adjacent timeline. Your services were satisfactory. However, there have been complications with your return to standard reality." Rebecca felt cold fear. "What are you talking about? Adjacent timeline?" "Your cargo was never meant for the Denver that exists in your timeline. It was meant for a Denver in a parallel reality where that restaurant exists and is awaiting its equipment. The shipping contractor hired your company because your route happened to pass through a convergence point, a place where multiple timelines briefly overlap. At that convergence, we were able to transfer the cargo from your trailer to the appropriate destination." "This is insane. That's not possible." "Nevertheless, it occurred. The issue is that the transfer process temporarily destabilized your vehicle's quantum coherence. You're currently phasing between timelines, existing partially in several realities simultaneously. That's why your observations don't match your instruments. You're seeing one timeline while your GPS reads another." Rebecca wanted to believe this was a prank, someone messing with her on the CB. But everything else that had happened was too strange to dismiss. The disappearing cargo, the full fuel tank, the repeating mile markers. "How do I fix this?" she demanded. "You need to reach a stabilization point, another convergence where the timelines align. There's one approximately 80 miles ahead on your current route. When you reach it, your quantum state should resolve, and you'll fully return to your original timeline. And if I don't reach it, then you'll continue phasing, eventually becoming permanently unstuck from your home timeline. You'll exist in the spaces between realities, unable to interact meaningfully with any single timeline. Effectively, you'll vanish from your own reality while remaining conscious and aware in the void between worlds." Rebecca accelerated, pushing her truck faster. She needed to reach that convergence point. But the repeating landscape continued. The same mile marker, the same trees, the same formations of clouds in the sky. "I'm not making progress," she said into the CB. "I'm stuck in a loop." "That's because you're simultaneously existing in multiple timelines. Each timeline's version of the highway is slightly different, and your consciousness is perceiving a composite. You need to focus on one timeline exclusively. Choose your original reality and maintain absolute focus on returning to it." "How do I do that?" Anchor yourself to specific memories from your timeline, detailed personal experiences that are unique to your life. By focusing on those memories, you strengthen your connection to your home reality and weaken your presence in the alternate timelines. Rebecca thought of her daughter's 8th birthday party 3 months ago. She remembered every detail: the pink cake with purple flowers, the way the sunlight came through the kitchen window, the sound of children laughing, the feeling of joy as her daughter blew out the candles. The highway shifted, subtly but noticeably. The mile markers began to advance. 217 became 218. Progress. Rebecca continued focusing on memories. Her wedding 10 years ago. The first time she'd driven a truck professionally. Her father teaching her to drive when she was 16. Each memory strengthened her connection to her timeline, pulling her back from the other realities where she'd been phasing. The landscape outside her windows stabilized. The loop broke. She was advancing normally now, the mile markers counting up properly, the scenery changing as it should. "I'm moving forward again," Rebecca said into the CB. "I'm making progress." "Good. Maintain your focus. You're approaching the convergence point. When you reach it, the stabilization will be automatic. You'll fully return to your home timeline and the phasing will stop." Rebecca drove with fierce concentration, holding on to her memories, her identity, everything that anchored her to her specific reality. The highway seemed to solidify around her, becoming more real, more concrete. Then she felt it, a sensation like passing through a membrane, a moment of resistance followed by sudden clarity. Everything snapped into perfect focus. The world felt real again in a way it hadn't for the past hour, solid, permanent, stable. Her CB radio crackled once more. "Stabilization complete. You've successfully returned to your home timeline. The payment for your services has been transferred with a substantial bonus for the complications you experienced. We will not be using your company for future shipments. The risk to drivers is unacceptable. Thank you for your service, Rebecca Montgomery." The radio went silent. Rebecca pulled over at the next rest stop and just sat there, shaking. She checked her phone. Texts from her daughter sent an hour ago asking when she'd be home. Normal reality, normal communications. Rebecca's dispatcher called. "Where are you? You went offline for almost 2 hours. We couldn't track your GPS." "I had some technical issues, but I'm okay now. The cargo situation resolved itself." "Resolved how?" "The cargo disappeared from your trailer." "I don't know how to explain it, but the client is satisfied. Check the account. There should be a payment." Her dispatcher confirmed the payment had indeed arrived, much larger than originally agreed upon. He asked no more questions about the cargo or what had happened. Some things were better left unexplained. Rebecca completed her trip back to Oklahoma City. She filed a standard trip report mentioning minor technical issues but no specifics about the temporal phasing or parallel timelines. Who would believe her? But Rebecca knew what had happened. She'd been recruited unknowingly to transport cargo between parallel realities. She'd served as a bridge between timelines, her truck passing through a convergence point that allowed transfer of physical objects from one reality to another. The question that haunted her was, how many other truckers had been used the same way? How many mysterious loads with fake client information were actually shipments between timelines? How many unexplained disappearances of cargo of entire trucks and drivers were really failed transfers where the stabilization didn't occur? Rebecca became obsessed with the idea. She researched cases of missing trucks, drivers who'd vanished without explanation. She found patterns. Certain routes seemed more dangerous than others. Certain companies had unusually high rates of accidents and disappearances. She started to suspect that cross-timeline shipping was more common than anyone realized, hidden beneath the enormous volume of normal freight traffic. She tried to warn other drivers, posting anonymously in trucker forums about the dangers of accepting loads with vague client information or unusual routing. Most dismissed her as paranoid. A few listened, recognizing something familiar in her warnings. Rebecca still drives trucks, but she's careful now about what loads she accepts. She verifies clients thoroughly. She avoids routes that pass through areas where she suspects convergence points might exist. She stays anchored to her timeline through constant focus on her memories and identity. Because she knows the truth now. Reality is more fragile than people realize. Multiple timelines exist simultaneously, occasionally overlapping in places where the boundaries between them thin. And there are entities, companies, or organizations that exploit those convergence points to move cargo between realities. Most drivers pass through convergence points without incident, oblivious to the thin spots in reality they're traversing. But occasionally, someone gets caught in the process. Someone phases between timelines and has to fight their way back to their home reality. Rebecca was lucky. She stabilized. She made it home. But she thinks about the drivers who didn't, the ones who got permanently stuck between timelines, existing in the void, conscious but unable to return to the solid reality of their original world. She thinks about them when she drives at night, when the highway seems to stretch endlessly in both directions, when the world outside her windows seems just slightly unreal. She wonders if they're out there somewhere, trapped in the spaces between realities, still driving their ghost trucks through impossible roads, forever trying to deliver cargo that can never be delivered because the destination exists in a timeline they can no longer reach. And sometimes, late at night, Rebecca hears voices on her CB radio. Other drivers calling out, their transmissions faint and distorted. They're asking for directions, asking where they are, asking how to get home. Rebecca tries to answer, tries to help, but she doesn't know if they can hear her or if they're too far displaced from her reality to receive normal transmissions. All she can do is drive carefully, stay anchored to her timeline, and hope that whatever organization is running cross-timeline shipping develops better protocols to protect the drivers they unknowingly recruit. Because next time, she might not be so lucky. Next time, the stabilization might fail, and Rebecca Montgomery might become one more missing driver, one more truck that vanished without explanation, lost forever in the spaces between realities where the cargo moves but the drivers never come home. Story 6. The Convoy That Wasn't There. Thomas Brennan had been driving nights for 18 years, preferring the empty highways and reduced traffic of midnight runs. In September of 2022, he was hauling construction materials from Phoenix to Seattle, traveling north on Interstate 5 through California. Around 2 in the morning, somewhere between Redding and the Oregon border, Thomas noticed headlights behind him. Multiple sets of headlights arranged in a convoy formation. Thomas checked his mirrors. 6 trucks maintaining perfect spacing, driving in single file about a quarter-mile behind him. All appeared to be similar make and model, older rigs from the 1980s based on their headlight configuration and grille design. He keyed his CB radio. "Breaker 19, this is Midnight Runner. Got a convoy behind me on I-5 northbound. You guys hauling together?" No response. The convoy maintained its position, neither gaining nor falling back. "Just following at a constant distance," Thomas tried again. "Convoy on I-5, you monitoring this channel?" "Over." Still silence. He switched to different CB channels, trying to raise the drivers. Nothing. The trucks continued following, silent and synchronized. After 30 minutes, Thomas started to feel uneasy. The convoy's perfect spacing was unnatural. Real truck drivers couldn't maintain that level of precision for that long, especially at night. And why wouldn't they respond to CB calls? He decided to test them. Thomas slowed down to 55 miles per hour. The convoy slowed exactly with him, maintaining the same distance. He accelerated to 70. The convoy matched his speed perfectly. Thomas took the next exit, pulling off the interstate. The convoy followed. Down the exit ramp, through the stop sign, onto the empty county road that paralleled the highway. The 6 trucks followed in perfect formation, their headlights illuminating the night behind Thomas. This wasn't right. Thomas accelerated, pushing his truck faster on the winding county road. The convoy stayed with him, never falling behind, never closing the distance. Just maintaining that quarter-mile separation with mechanical precision. Thomas's heart raced. He tried his cell phone, thinking to call for help, but there was no signal this far from town. He tried the CB again. "If anyone can hear this, I need help. I'm on County Road 42 north of Reading. I'm being followed by multiple vehicles. Please respond." A voice came through the static, but it wasn't from another trucker. It was distorted, layered, like multiple people speaking in unison. "You've been chosen for the convoy. You'll join us soon. Everyone joins eventually." "Who is this? What do you want?" "We are the convoy. We've been driving this road since the accident. Since our brakes failed on the mountain pass, since we went off the edge together. We've been driving ever since, and we need more drivers, more trucks. The convoy must grow." Thomas realized with horror what he was dealing with. Ghost trucks, drivers who died in some mass accident, condemned to endlessly drive the highways, recruiting new members for their phantom convoy. He spotted a turnoff ahead. A private road leading to what looked like a ranger station or maintenance facility. Thomas took it without signaling, hoping to lose his pursuers. The convoy followed seamlessly, anticipating his move as if they could read his intentions. The road ended at a locked gate. Thomas slammed on his brakes, stopping inches from the barrier. The convoy stopped behind him, engines idling in perfect synchrony. Thomas grabbed a flashlight and climbed out of his cab, thinking maybe he could find another way out on foot. But as soon as his feet hit the ground, he felt wrong. Dizzy, disoriented. The world seemed to flicker, alternating between the present night and something else. He caught glimpses of another time, daytime, different weather, the road covered in skid marks and debris. He was seeing the past. The moment of the accident that had created the ghost convoy. Thomas watched as the scene played out around him, 6 trucks descending the mountain pass, their brakes failing one by one. The lead driver, realizing his brakes were gone, trying to warn the others on CB radio. But they were all using the same equipment, all suffering the same brake failure. Some defective part that had been installed in all their trucks, a disaster waiting to happen. The trucks couldn't stop, couldn't even slow down. They went off the road together, tumbling down the mountainside, crushing and burning. All 6 drivers died within minutes of each other, their CB radios still transmitting, their voices calling out in fear and pain until the radios died with them. And somehow those final transmissions had never stopped, had echoed through the years, seeking new drivers to join the endless run. Recruiting living truckers to replace the dead, to become part of the convoy that could never stop, never rest, never reach its destination. The vision faded. Thomas was back in the present, standing by his truck, the 6 phantom rigs idling behind him. He understood now. They weren't trying to hurt him. They were trying to recruit him, make him part of their number, condemn him to the same eternal drive they endured. Thomas climbed back into his cab. He tried to think. How did you escape from ghosts? How did you refuse an invitation from the dead? An idea came to him. He grabbed his CB mic. "I acknowledge your loss. I recognize your deaths. I honor your memory, but I'm not dead. I don't belong to your convoy. I'm returning to the highway, and you need to let me go." The layered voices responded. "You entered our road. You accepted our invitation. You must join." I didn't accept anything. I took a wrong turn. That's not an invitation. That's a mistake. I'm correcting it now. Thomas put his truck in reverse. He backed away from the gate, careful not to hit the phantom trucks behind him. Surprisingly, they moved aside, allowing him passage. He maneuvered back onto the county road and headed back toward the interstate, the convoy following but not interfering. As Thomas drove, he continued speaking to them. Tell me your names. Tell me what happened. I'll make sure people know. I'll make sure your accident is remembered, but you have to let me go. You have to release me from this. The voices, one by one, identified themselves. Robert Haynes died September 14, 1987. Michael Torres, same date. 4 more names, all dying together when their brake systems failed catastrophically on that mountain pass. What company did you work for? Thomas asked. Western Freight Solutions. They installed the defective brake components, saved money on cheap parts, cost us our lives. Company folded after the lawsuits. No one remembers us anymore. No one knows what happened. Thomas reached the interstate on-ramp. As he accelerated onto I-5, the phantom convoy stopped at the ramp entrance. They didn't follow him back onto the highway. He checked his mirrors. The 6 trucks sat there, headlights illuminating the empty ramp, before fading gradually into darkness. Thomas drove straight through to Seattle without stopping. As soon as he arrived, he began researching the accident. He found newspaper articles from 1987 describing the crash. 6 trucks, all from Western Freight Solutions, all losing their brakes simultaneously on a mountain pass north of Redding. Investigation revealed defective brake components, leading to massive lawsuits and the company's bankruptcy. The drivers had been vindicated legally, but their deaths had been forgotten by history. Just another trucking accident from decades ago. No memorial, no recognition beyond yellowed newspaper clippings. Thomas decided to change that. He contacted the families of the 6 dead drivers, those he could locate. He organized a memorial at the site where the accident had occurred. Local trucking organizations participated. A small plaque was installed, naming the 6 drivers who died when corporate negligence had put profit over safety. At the memorial service, Thomas told the assembled truckers about encountering the ghost convoy. Some believed him. Others thought he was being poetic or metaphorical. But they all agreed the 6 dead drivers deserved to be remembered. Thomas never encountered the convoy again after that night. He drove the same stretch of I-5 regularly for years afterward, always watching his mirrors, always listening to the CB. But the phantom trucks never reappeared. He'd like to believe the memorial freed them, gave them the recognition they'd been seeking for decades. That they finally found peace and stopped their endless drive through the night. But Thomas knows there are other ghost convoys out there, other drivers who died tragically, whose deaths went unremembered, who continue driving the highways seeking acknowledgement, seeking to add to their numbers, seeking someone to remember their names. He's heard stories from other truckers. Phantom vehicles that follow for miles then vanish. Convoys that appear and disappear without explanation. CB transmissions from drivers who died decades ago, still calling out position reports and asking for directions to destinations they'll never reach. The highways are haunted. That's what Thomas has learned. Haunted by every driver who died behind the wheel, by every catastrophic failure, by every moment of terror when brakes failed or tires blew or other vehicles crossed the center line. All that death, all that fear, it leaves impressions, creates echoes that persist for years, for decades, maybe forever. Thomas drives more carefully now. He maintains his truck meticulously. He never cuts corners on maintenance or safety, because he knows what happens to drivers who die on the highway. He knows they might not find peace, might continue driving forever, trapped in the moment of their deaths, replaying their final runs for eternity. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, Thomas monitors his CB radio carefully. When he hears voices that don't sound quite right, transmissions that seem to come from decades past, he responds. He acknowledges them. He asks their names. He learns their stories. And then he makes sure those stories are told. He finds where the accidents occurred. He contacts families. He advocates for memorials. He ensures the dead drivers are remembered. It's become his mission, his purpose beyond just hauling freight. Thomas has become the voice for the dead, the chronicler of forgotten accidents, the man who ensures that drivers who died on the highway are not forgotten by history. Because every time he helps memorialize a dead driver, he feels like maybe somewhere a ghost truck stops driving. A phantom convoy diminishes by one. A spirit finds peace after decades of restless travel. Thomas doesn't know if that's really what happens. He'll never know for sure. But he hopes so. He hopes that his efforts mean something, that the memorial plaques and remembered names actually help the dead find rest. And on clear nights, when the highway stretches empty before him and the stars shine bright above, Thomas sometimes sees them in his mirrors. Phantom headlights just for a moment, keeping pace with his truck. Not threatening, not following to recruit him. Just accompanying him, thanking him, showing gratitude for being remembered. Then they fade away and Thomas is alone again on the highway. But he doesn't feel alone. He feels connected to every driver who's ever rolled down these roads, living or dead, present or past. He's part of something larger than himself. Part of the eternal fraternity of truckers, bound together by the highways they travel and the loads they haul and the risks they take every time they climb behind the wheel. And that's enough. That's purpose. That's meaning. Thomas drives on through the night, carrying his cargo, carrying his memories, carrying the names of the dead who trusted him to tell their stories. And the highway, ancient and patient, welcomes him as it has welcomed millions of drivers before, as it will welcome millions yet to come, all of them leaving their marks, their stories, their ghosts on the endless American roads that connect everything and lead everywhere and never truly end. Story 7. The Rest Stop That Moved. Catherine Walsh had been a trucker for 12 years, specializing in pharmaceutical deliveries that required strict temperature control and tight schedules. In April of 2023, she was transporting medical supplies from Atlanta to Miami via Interstate 75, a route she'd driven dozens of times. Around 3 in the morning, somewhere in Central Florida, Catherine pulled into a rest stop to use the facilities and stretch her legs. It was a decision that would trap her in a nightmare that defied all logic. The rest stop appeared normal. Standard Florida DOT facility with restrooms, vending machines, picnic areas, and truck parking. A few other vehicles were present, a couple of cars, one other semi-truck. Catherine parked, climbed out, and walked toward the building. The night was warm and humid, typical for Florida. Crickets chirped in the surrounding palmetto scrub. Catherine used the restroom, bought a coffee from the vending machine, and walked back to her truck. The entire stop took maybe 10 minutes. But when she tried to leave the rest stop, everything changed. She drove to the exit, intending to merge back onto I-75. But as she approached the exit ramp, she found herself driving back into the rest stop parking area. Confused, Catherine tried again. She carefully followed the exit signs, maintained the correct lane, watched where she was going. But somehow she ended up back in the parking area. Catherine stopped and got out. She walked to the exit road, following it on foot. It led away from the rest stop, curving toward what should be the interstate. But as Catherine walked, the road curved back on itself. After 200 yards of following what appeared to be the exit, she found herself back at the rest stop entrance. This wasn't possible. The exit road couldn't curve in a complete circle. That's not how roads worked. But the physical evidence was undeniable. She'd followed a straight-appearing road that had somehow looped back to where it started. Catherine returned to her truck and tried the CB radio. "Breaker 19, anyone on this channel? I'm having an issue at the rest stop on I-75 southbound mile marker approximately 200. Can anyone confirm normal access to and from this location? Over." No response. She checked her cell phone. No signal, which was strange. She'd had full bars when she'd pulled in 10 minutes ago. Catherine noticed the other vehicles in the rest stop were gone. The parking area was empty except for her truck. That was impossible. She'd only been attempting to exit for 5 minutes. The other vehicles couldn't have left without her noticing. She decided to wait for another vehicle to arrive. If someone else pulled in, she could ask them about the exit. But minutes passed, then an hour. No other vehicles appeared. The highway beyond the rest stop remained completely empty. Not a single car or truck passed in either direction. Catherine felt the first stirrings of real fear. This wasn't a navigation problem, this was something else. Something wrong with the rest stop itself. She explored the facility more thoroughly. The buildings were standard DOT construction. Restrooms, information boards, vending machines. Everything looked normal. But when Catherine checked the information boards, she found something disturbing. The maps of Florida showed the rest stop at the correct location on I-75. But the emergency contact numbers listed were outdated, using exchange prefixes that hadn't been in service for decades. In the women's restroom, Catherine found graffiti scratched into a stall door. "Been here 3 days, can't leave. If you find this, try the north exit. MR 41823. Today was April 20th. Someone had written this message 2 days ago. Someone who'd been trapped here just like Catherine was now trapped. Catherine ran back to her truck and tried the north exit. The rest stop had 2 exits, one leading to southbound I-75, the other to northbound. She'd been trying the southbound exit. Maybe the northbound one would work. She drove carefully toward the north exit, following the signs. But the same thing happened. The road curved impossibly back to the rest stop. She ended up in the parking area again, having driven in what should have been a straight line, but somehow formed a closed loop. Catherine screamed in frustration and fear. She was trapped. The rest stop had become a closed system, its exits leading only back to itself. Physically impossible, but undeniably real. She tried driving off-road directly into the palmetto scrub surrounding the rest stop. Her truck bounced over rough terrain, pushing through vegetation. But after 100 yards, she found herself approaching the rest stop again from the opposite direction. No matter which direction she drove, she ended up back at the rest stop. The location had become a trap, a pocket of space that folded back on itself, preventing escape. Catherine parked and sat in her truck, trying to think. She had food and water. Her refrigeration unit was running, maintaining her cargo at the correct temperature. She could survive for days physically, but the psychological impact of being trapped in an impossible space was already taking its toll. She explored the rest stop on foot, searching for any clue, any explanation. In the maintenance building, which was unlocked, she found a log book. Maintenance workers were supposed to document their visits and any issues with the facility. Catherine flipped through pages. Most entries were routine. Restocked vending machines, cleaned restrooms, mowed grass. But then she found an entry from 3 years ago that made her blood run cold. Facility experiencing spatial anomaly. Multiple visitors report inability to exit. State DOT notified. Facility should be closed pending investigation. Maintenance Supervisor J. Collins, 4/22/2020. 3 years ago, this rest stop had experienced the same phenomenon. And based on the entry, it had been reported to authorities. But the rest stop hadn't been closed. It was still operational, still appearing on maps, still trapping unsuspecting travelers. Catherine continued reading. Another entry from 2 months after the first. Anomaly seems to have resolved. Able to enter and exit facility normally. Cause remains unknown. Facility remaining operational. J. Collins, 6/15/2020. So the trap wasn't permanent. It came and went. The rest stop would trap people for a period, then release them. But how long? Days, weeks? And what happened to people who couldn't wait that long? Who ran out of supplies or lost their minds to the psychological pressure? Catherine found more graffiti as she searched. Messages scratched into walls, written in marker on information boards. Each one told the same story. Someone trapped, unable to leave, eventually disappearing. Some messages were dated months ago, others years. Each person trapped, each person apparently eventually escaping or vanishing, each person leaving only a brief message as evidence they'd been there. As Catherine read these messages, she developed a theory. The rest stop existed in normal space most of the time, but occasionally, maybe due to some geographic or temporal anomaly, it shifted into a pocket dimension. A closed loop where the exits didn't connect to the outside world but only to itself. During these periods, anyone inside was trapped. Then, after some undefined time, the anomaly would resolve. The rest stop would shift back to normal space and the trapped travelers could leave. The question was, how long until this particular manifestation resolved? Catherine settled in to wait. She rationed her food and water. She maintained her cargo temperature, hoping her company's tracking system would notice her truck had been stationary for an extended period and send help. But she doubted help could reach her while the rest stop was in its anomalous state. She slept in her cab, waking frequently to check if anything had changed. Days passed. Catherine lost track of how many. Time felt strange in the trapped rest stop. Her phone's clock continued working, but the displayed time felt disconnected from her subjective experience. On what her phone claimed was the fourth day, Catherine woke to see another vehicle in the parking area. An RV, relatively new with out-of-state plates. She ran toward it, desperate for human contact. A family emerged, parents and 2 children looking confused and frightened. They'd pulled in for a bathroom break and now couldn't leave. Catherine explained what she'd learned. The family didn't want to believe her, but after trying the exits themselves and experiencing the impossible loops, they had to accept the situation. "How long until we can leave?" the father demanded. "I don't know. Days, maybe. Based on messages I've found, people eventually get out. The anomaly resolves and we'll be able to drive away normally." The family had more supplies than Catherine. They shared food with her, and in return she explained what she'd discovered about the rest stop's history. Together they explored more thoroughly. The children found something Catherine had missed. A small maintenance door that led underground. A crawl space for accessing pipes and electrical systems. Catherine descended with a flashlight. The crawl space was cramped but navigable. She followed pipes and conduits, trying to understand the facility's layout. Then she found something that shouldn't exist. A room. A spherical room carved from limestone, accessible through a narrow passage from the crawl space. Inside the room, the walls were covered with symbols, not modern graffiti but ancient carvings. Native American in origin, possibly Seminole or Calusa. The symbols depicted circles, loops, representations of time and space that seemed to fold back on themselves. Catherine photographed everything with her phone. She'd studied some archaeology in college. These carvings were old, pre-Columbian, and they suggested this location had been significant to indigenous peoples. Perhaps they'd known about the anomaly. Perhaps they'd carved these symbols as a warning. In the center of the carved room sat a stone, not limestone like the walls, but something else, obsidian or black granite, polished smooth. The stone was warm to the touch, warmer than the surrounding rock should be. Catherine had a sudden intuition. This stone was the anchor, the focal point of the anomaly. Whatever caused the rest stop to shift into its closed loop state, it originated here, with this carved room and this strange, warm stone. She tried moving the stone. It was heavy, but not impossibly so. Catherine dragged it toward the passage, intending to bring it to the surface. Maybe removing it would break the anomaly. As soon as she moved the stone from its central position, Catherine felt something change, a subtle shift in the air, a change in pressure. She climbed back to the surface quickly. The family was waiting. "Something just happened," the mother said. "Did you do something down there?" Catherine explained about the carved room and the stone. "Let's try the exits again." They drove to the southbound exit in Catherine's truck, the family following in their RV. This time, when they reached the exit, the road led onto I-75. Real progress. The loop was broken. Catherine pulled onto the highway, her heart soaring with relief. Behind her, the family's RV followed. They'd escaped. The anomaly had ended, triggered by moving that ancient stone. They drove 20 miles south before Catherine pulled into another rest stop, this one completely normal and non-anomalous. The family pulled in behind her. They exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. They'd shared an impossible experience, and that created a bond. Catherine reported her delayed delivery to her company. She claimed mechanical issues and paperwork problems. They weren't happy about the delay but accepted her explanation. Catherine never reported what really happened at that rest stop. She knew no one would believe her without evidence, and she had no desire to return to gather evidence. She'd escaped, and that was enough. But she did contact the Florida DOT anonymously, reporting that the rest stop at mile marker 200 on southbound I-75 should be inspected and possibly closed due to structural anomalies. She didn't explain further. The rest stop remained open. Catherine checked periodically. No reports of issues, no news stories about trapped travelers. Perhaps moving the stone had permanently resolved the anomaly. Or perhaps it just entered a dormant phase, waiting to trap the next unsuspecting traveler who pulled in during its active period. Catherine changed her routes after that. She avoided I-75 in Florida entirely, taking alternate paths even though they added time and distance to her runs. She'd learned that some locations are fundamentally wrong, built on top of places where the normal rules of space and time don't fully apply. She thinks about the other travelers who'd been trapped there over the years, the ones who left messages carved into walls. Did they all eventually escape? Or did some of them remain trapped, unable to wait out the anomaly, their trucks and vehicles still sitting in that impossible parking area when it shifted back to normal space? Catherine will never know, and she's okay with that. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, some questions are better left unasked. She escaped, and dozens or hundreds of other travelers will never even know they were in danger when they pulled into that rest stop for a quick bathroom break. Because the anomaly is still there, dormant perhaps, but not gone. The carved room underground still exists, the ancient symbols still worn of loops and cycles. The warm stone, if Catherine didn't permanently displace it, still sits in its chamber, waiting to twist space back into impossible configurations. And someday, when conditions align just right, another traveler will pull into that rest stop and find they can't leave. They'll drive the exits that loop back to the parking area. They'll search for answers and find the messages left by previous victims. They'll wait, trapped, until the anomaly resolves or until they discover what Catherine discovered. That sometimes, to escape impossible situations, you have to find the anchor, the focal point, and move it. Catherine drives on, making her deliveries, living her life. But she never forgets those 4 days trapped in a rest stop that existed partially outside normal space. She never forgets the terror of driving in circles, of following roads that impossibly led back to where they started. She never forgets the relief of finally breaking free and feeling the truck accelerate onto a real highway that actually led somewhere. And she never takes rest stops for granted anymore. Before pulling in, Catherine checks her phone's GPS carefully, verifying the location matches all her maps. She reads reviews if available. She stays alert for any sign something might be wrong. Because she knows now that not every rest stop is really a rest stop. Some are traps, intentional or accidental. Some are locations where reality bends and the laws that govern normal space cease to apply. And if you're unlucky enough to stop at one during its active phase, you might be there for a very long time, driving impossible exits that lead nowhere, waiting for the world to remember your location exists and allow you to rejoin the normal flow of traffic on America's highways. Story 8. The Dispatcher Who Wasn't. Leonard Fisher had been an independent owner-operator for 22 years, taking jobs from various brokers and freight companies. In December of 2023, Leonard received a call about a high-paying load from a dispatcher he'd never worked with before. The job seemed straightforward: pick up manufacturing equipment in Detroit, deliver to a factory in Houston. The pay was excellent, nearly double the normal rate for that route and cargo weight. Leonard accepted. The dispatcher, who identified herself as Michelle Garson, sent all the paperwork electronically. Everything looked legitimate: proper dot numbers, insurance certificates, pickup and delivery addresses. Leonard loaded the cargo in Detroit and headed south. The first indication something was wrong came 12 hours into the trip. Leonard was driving through Kentucky when his phone rang. The caller ID showed the dispatch company's number. "Leonard, this is Michelle. I need you to alter your route. Instead of I-65 south, take State Route 45 west through Illinois." Leonard frowned. "That adds hours to the trip. Why the change?" "Client request. They need the cargo to arrive from the west side of Houston rather than north. It's about their receiving dock configuration. I'll compensate you for the extra miles." Leonard didn't like route changes mid-trip, but the extra pay was tempting. He agreed and altered course. 4 hours later, Michelle called again. "Leonard, another route adjustment. Take Highway 54 through Missouri instead of continuing on 45. "Michelle, that's way off course. What's going on?" "I apologize for the confusion. The client is being difficult about routing. Something about avoiding way stations due to permit complications. Just follow my directions and you'll be compensated handsomely." Leonard was getting suspicious now. Avoiding way stations suggested something illegal. He pulled over and checked his cargo. It matched the manifest: manufacturing equipment, properly secured, nothing obviously contraband. "Michelle, I need to verify something. What company do you dispatch for?" A pause. "Cross Country Freight Solutions. We've been in business for 15 years. Leonard looked up the company on his phone. It existed, had proper FMCSA registration, good reviews, but when he called the main office number, it went to voicemail. It was evening, so that might be normal. Leonard continued following Michelle's directions, but his unease grew. The routes she was directing him along were increasingly rural, taking him through small highways and back roads rather than major interstates. Another call. Michelle's voice. "Leonard, I need you to stop at the next town and wait for further instructions. Don't deliver the cargo yet." "Michelle, I'm already behind schedule because of your route changes. What's going on?" "The client is having receiving issues. Just wait at the next town. I'll call you within the hour." Leonard pulled into a truck stop in a small Missouri town. He tried calling the dispatch company's main office again. Still voicemail. He tried the client company in Houston. That number was disconnected. Growing alarm made Leonard check the cargo again, this time more thoroughly. He broke open one of the crates. Inside wasn't manufacturing equipment. It was electronic devices he didn't recognize. Unmarked black boxes with ports and cables, military-looking but without any identifying information. Leonard immediately called the police. While waiting for them to arrive, his phone rang again. Michelle's voice, but different now. Harder, colder. "Leonard, you shouldn't have checked the cargo. You should have just delivered it as instructed." "Who are you? What am I really carrying?" "You're carrying exactly what the manifest says, manufacturing equipment. That's what you'll tell the police when they arrive. You accepted the load. You transported it across state lines. If you claim otherwise, you're going to have serious legal problems." "I'm not delivering whatever this is. It's not what the manifest claimed." "Leonard, look at your manifest again. Look at the cargo description." Leonard pulled out the paperwork. His blood ran cold. The cargo description had changed. It now listed the electronic devices he'd found, properly categorized and described. But he'd read this manifest before loading. It had said manufacturing equipment. The document had been altered somehow, modified digitally after he'd accepted the load. "You're framing me," Leonard said. "We're protecting our interests. You accepted a load. You transport it where we tell you. You ask no questions. That's how this works. The police won't find anything illegal when they inspect. Those devices are legal to transport, but the client who's expecting them doesn't like delays. If you don't complete this delivery, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Michelle's voice carried a smile. "Your truck's GPS shows you're at the stop-and-go truck stop on Highway 63. Your home address is 23 Riverside Drive in Columbus, Ohio. Your daughter Jessica attends Ohio State University. Your ex-wife Susan lives at 14 Maple Street in Worthington. Would you like me to continue demonstrating how much we know about you?" Leonard felt ice in his veins. This wasn't a normal freight company. This was something else. Something criminal. Something dangerous. And they had all his information, all his connections, everyone he cared about. The police arrived. Leonard made a decision. He lied. He told them he'd stopped to check his cargo as routine procedure, that everything was fine, that he'd just been paranoid about the route changes. The police looked at his manifest, saw properly documented cargo, and left after running his DOT information. As soon as they left, Michelle called again. "Good choice, Leonard. Now here's your new route. Follow it exactly. Deliver to the address I'm sending to your GPS. Complete the delivery, take your payment, and forget this ever happened. And if I don't, then we start making phone calls. Jessica's apartment could have a break-in. Susan's car could have brake failure. Accidents happen, Leonard. People get hurt. Or you could just deliver a load of legal cargo and walk away with double your normal rate. Your choice." Leonard had no choice. He was trapped. He followed Michelle's directions, taking increasingly remote routes through rural Missouri and Oklahoma. The GPS coordinates she sent him to wasn't a factory in Houston. It was a warehouse in rural Texas, unmarked, surrounded by empty farmland. Men were waiting when Leonard arrived. They unloaded the cargo quickly and efficiently, no conversation, no paperwork. One of them handed Leonard an envelope of cash, twice what he'd been promised. "Drive away," the man said. "Forget you were here. If anyone asks, you delivered to Houston as planned. The paperwork will reflect that." Leonard drove away, his hands shaking on the wheel. He checked his documentation later. The delivery receipt showed Houston, the proper factory address, everything normal. The electronic trail had been completely sanitized. He tried calling Michelle's number. Disconnected. He tried the dispatch company. The main office had no record of anyone named Michelle Garson. No record of his load, no record of anything. Leonard had been recruited unwittingly to transport something for people who could manipulate records, threaten families, and make an entire delivery disappear from official documentation. and there was nothing he could do about it. He didn't report it. Reporting meant danger to his family. Michelle, whoever she really was, had made that clear. So Leonard stayed silent. But over the following months, Leonard started noticing things. Other truckers reporting similar experiences in online forums. Anonymous posts about dispatchers who gave route changes, about cargo that wasn't what the manifest claimed, about deliveries to unmarked locations. Each trucker who shared their story mentioned the same thing: threats against family, manipulation of documents, payments in cash. Someone was using truckers to transport illegal goods, hiding behind legitimate freight company identities, recruiting unwitting drivers and then coercing them into completing the deliveries. A sophisticated operation that exploited the trucking industry's complexity and the driver's vulnerability. Leonard researched obsessively. He found patterns. Certain routes were used repeatedly. Certain types of cargo were favorites. The operation was systematic, professional, and extremely careful about covering its tracks. He wanted to go to authorities, but every time he considered it, he remembered Michelle's threats, his daughter, his ex-wife, the people he loved who could be hurt because he'd stumbled into something he shouldn't have. So Leonard changed how he worked. He stopped accepting loads from brokers he didn't personally know. He verified every company thoroughly before accepting jobs. He became paranoid about cargo, checking it constantly, refusing anything that seemed even slightly suspicious. He warned other truckers in private conversations, never publicly. Be careful about new dispatchers. Verify everything. Don't accept high-paying loads without checking the company thoroughly. And if something seems wrong, walk away. Some listened. Others thought he was being paranoid. Leonard didn't care. He couldn't stop the operation himself, couldn't expose it without risking his family. But he could warn other drivers, try to reduce the pool of victims. Leonard never heard from Michelle again, but he knew she, or people like her, were still out there, still recruiting truckers, still using the system to move illegal goods across the country, hiding behind fake paperwork and threats. The highways Leonard drives now feel different. He sees other trucks and wonders, are they carrying what their manifests claim? Or are they unwitting pawns in operations they don't understand? How many drivers are out there right now coerced into completing deliveries they never should have accepted? Leonard will never know. The operation is too sophisticated, too careful, too well protected. All he can do is protect himself, warn others, and hope that eventually someone with more resources and fewer vulnerabilities will expose what's happening. But until then, Leonard drives carefully. He verifies everything. He trusts no one. And he never ever accepts a load from a dispatcher named Michelle Garson because he knows now that some dispatchers don't exist. They're just voices on phones, identities borrowed or fabricated, tools used by criminals who understand that the best way to move illegal cargo is to hide it among the millions of legitimate loads moving across America's highways every day. And somewhere out there, Michelle or someone like her is making another phone call, offering another high-paying load to another unsuspecting trucker, starting the cycle again. Because the operation never stops. The freight must move, and there are always more drivers who don't know what they're getting into until it's too late. Until they've opened a crate and found something that shouldn't be there, until they've answered a phone call from a dispatcher who doesn't exist, until they're trapped in a web they can't escape without putting everyone they love in danger. Leonard knows this, lives with this knowledge every day. And all he can do is keep driving, keep warning others, and hope that someday the people running these operations make a mistake, that someone catches them, that the mysterious dispatchers and their coerced truckers finally face justice. But he's not optimistic, because in 22 years of driving, Leonard has learned that the highways hide many secrets. And some secrets are too dangerous, too well protected, too profitable to ever be fully exposed. They exist in the gaps between legitimate commerce and criminal enterprise, moving in darkness along routes that shift and change, coordinated by people who don't exist and delivered by drivers who have no choice but to comply. And Leonard Fisher, independent owner-operator, knows he'll be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his career, waiting for the next phone call from a dispatcher who isn't real, offering a load he can't refuse, taking him places he shouldn't go, and forcing him to be complicit in crimes he never wanted to commit. Because that's what it means to be a trucker now. Not just moving freight from point A to point B, but navigating a landscape where nothing is quite what it seems, where documents lie, where dispatchers exist only as voices, and where every load might be the one that traps you in something much darker and more dangerous than bad weather or mechanical failure or any of the ordinary hazards of life on the road. The real danger isn't the highways. It's what moves along them, hidden in plain sight, protected by paperwork and threats and the simple fact that most people never look twice at a truck passing by. Because it's just a truck, just a driver making a living, just ordinary commerce. Except when it's not, except when it's a trap, except when you answer the phone and a dispatcher who doesn't exist sends you down a road you can never truly leave, even after the delivery is complete and the cash is in your hand and the paperwork shows everything was perfectly legitimate. Leonard knows, and he'll never forget. And he'll spend the rest of his life trying to make sure other truckers don't learn the same lesson the hard way, by accepting a call from someone like Michelle and discovering too late that some dispatchers aren't human at all. They're just voices, masks, tools used by people who understand that the easiest way to commit crimes is to make someone else commit them for you. Someone who has too much to lose to ever tell the truth about what really happened on that delivery to nowhere.